Everybody loves to be the first to do something. First man on the moon, first to summit Everest, first person to sneeze with their eyes open. But today, on this date and at this time, we reveal a first of equal measure. Listeners and watchers, we present to you the first Marvel Champion's identity to be a hero, a minion, an ally and a villain. My name is Benji and this is the review of the new Nebula Hero Pack. Taking edutainment to the next level, we'll be running through her signature 15 and all the other good stuff. We begin this story as we always do with the alter ego, the side of the identity card you hope you see as little of as is humanly possible. And here it's downright choppy waters with a wreck of 3, a hand size of 6 and a health pool of 9. Because, glorious number sequencing aside, they have yet to print a top tier identity that's that squishy. Fun, yes, but super duper, no. That aside, there are very few things I like more than drawing cards, and with cybernetic upgrades it turns out you can draw 2 of them, without a freaking downside. Well, unless you count having to play a technique upgrade and being in alter ego form in the first place. But that's like complaining you've got a briefcase full of cash but it's all the way at home. Which is more or less the way I would describe her basic power stat line. 2s across the board not only strokes my need for uniformity and symmetry, but it also makes you a Jane of all trades, which is really handy in solo play, but also more than welcome in multiplayer. The hand size of 5 is as expected, but it's her combat protocols that really do necessitate taking a gander at these technique cards quick sharp, because we need the whole picture pronto. What we can see is a forced response that we've seen before, but more often than not on the villain side of things. Let a card's special ability pop off and then send it to the bin post-haste. Let's just hope we're still in Value Town once they've done their thing. So then, like a kid on Christmas Eve, we'll swerve the first 2 cards of her signature 15 for the moment so we can get to Le Techniques. Starting with 2 copies of Cutthroat Ambition, the picture becomes a bit clearer. These cards provide a passive bonus and the one-off bonus at the start of your turn. In other words, whatever you play on a given turn is yours to keep for at least that turn, but the next time you start your go in hero form, this lets off the special fireworks and then departs. In this instance, I'm pleased they've killed 2 birds with 1 stone, with their piercing and overkill, because although you'll rarely need both, and the former is more situational than the latter, but you don't need both for the card to be solid. And that all goes without talking about the payoff. A delayed 3 threat removal for $1, and the incidental passive bonus has got me psyched for these cards. On to the next. Which looks very much just like 1 copy of Evasive Maneuvering. Here the passive is a menagerie incarnate of evasion. Whatever the scenario wants to stonewall you with, this card says, no, I'm going to do it my way. The villain and or the main scheme is never off limits with this little piggy in hand, and the payoff this time is to either stun or confuse your enemy. Again, a card really enhanced by being given the choice. You see, there's consistent situational and just straight up situational, and I'll take the first one any day of the week. I actively avoid and even undervalue cards that only pay off in certain situations, but these techniques are really warming up the fireplace of my prejudices. One too many metaphors aside, it's actually quite tough to evaluate these cards. We've never really had what I would call suspend cards, where the real good shizzle happens on a future turn. So when you look at value, you first have to assess the quality of the special on its own for one resource, and then decide, assuming it is a downside that you have to wait for it, whether the passive is a respectable trade-off. And for me, this card lies about smack bang in the middle, just about fine. but also a card that receives a bump in quality against faster scheming and harder hitting enemies, not to mention higher difficulty levels. Another one of unyielding persistence is next on tap, and there's very little situational about this. Giving her 3/3/2 basic powers and stalwart is nothing to sniff at, but not as potent as you might think. When you couple it with gaining a tough status card though, all of a sudden we're back in Value Town. This is the most attritional card we've come across so far, doing a little bit for you in offense and affording you the luxury of tanking a hit on the back end. I can live with that. 2 copies of Weapons Master are all about the damage dealing though. Retaliate 1 is a neat trick, but it's also the first time we need to ask ourselves how much time we're going to be spending in alter ego form. Because up till now all of the passives have been active in the hero phase, and so within your control as to how and when they're applied. Don't get me wrong, you're getting one villain phase with Retaliate 1 no matter which way you swing it because of the way combat protocols on a hero side works, but it does illustrate the need that you'll have to be flexing your form flipping muscles more than usual. Not just to get payoff for something incidental as some retaliate damage, but in general. Clearly you're always going to have a plan for next turn front and centre at the very start of this turn. And taking this card at face value, you can't be anything but happy about a net 5 damage return from your minimal investment. Our last technique for today is 2 copies of Wide Stance, which for me personally is a class act of a card. The damage reduction needs no explanation. Even on a minion heavy board, if you need to defend against the villain, you can still take a couple of 2 damage attacks from some minions without breaking a sweat. But it's the special that has me a little gooey eyed. Taking a peek at the top 3 cards in the encounter deck and basically mitigating the impact of each of those 3 cards is Willy Wonka golden ticket goodness. You basically discard the card that will hit you the hardest, unless of course it's got nada boost icons, and then you can just plonk it on top ready for you to lol at the villain when they activate, and place the least impactful card 2 from the top. Yes, of course there are encounter deck shenanigans that can turn your best laid plans upside down, but whatevs, this card is the cat's pyjamas. We then have to wind our way back to card number 1, aka Gamora, who herself is now available as a hero, basic ally, signature ally, and minion. 2 thwart and 2 attack with 3 health for $3 is decent enough, and resolving a special ability, so long as you can of course, will more often than not be a good thing. Yes, there are going to be times when you don't choose to proc this, but those times will be in the minority, meaning that you don't have to just plan for the future, you can act in the now. Yeah, I like her. She's pushing the game plan as all good signature allies should do. Up next is her ship, and before I reach for my copy and paste keys, I will instead try and come up with something eloquent and verbose to fill the airwaves. No, can't do it. There are, as a recap, 2 very broad types of these cards. Ones that cost 2 like this and give you a wild resource, no strings every turn, and ones that cost 1 and carry a restriction as to how you get your free economy. Swings and roundabouts, noughts and crosses, economy is economy. For our penultimate signature card, we have a 1 and a 2 combat ready cards. A quite delightful little cherry on top of the technique suite of cards. If you bear in mind that just under 1/4 of your deck is a target for this multiple choice card, means that its usefulness will be on the high end come rain or shine. Yep, no one loves to shuffle cards back into their deck, but the thinner your player deck, the more reliable option 1 becomes. Option 2 on the other hand is so rarely going to be a whiff, it's unbelievable. Unless you not realise this doesn't discard the card after use. You're getting 2 swings at Matt with these specials, and that is the very definition of sweet money value. I would gobble up 3 or 4 copies of this card, but fair's fair, I'll take the 2. Ending on a not dissimilar high note with 3 copies of Lethal Intent. And for all the reasons Combat Ready was good, this shares a lot of that action. Granted, it's at a marginally higher cost, the cost of the X, but what you get in return is knowing the special or specials that you activate. That doesn't mean you have all the choice in the world, it's only what's out on the table, but there is some serious potential here, especially on those setup turns where you've drawn cards from Nebula's alter ego action. If the stars align, you're going to be experiencing some wonderfully impactful turns. Playing 2 techniques and proccing them both with this will cost you an equivalent 7 cards worth of resources. So, the fireworks show is more than achievable, even if you're in hero form, so long as you've got a couple of ramp cards out as well. All in all, a quite lovely way to say goodbye to the Signature 15. Her obligation inferiority complex feels like option 1 more is the bait, ironically forcing you to take a double hit on tempo loss, as the technique specials will also get delayed a further turn. I'll still take the surge though given the chance, and if you've only got 1 or even none on board, then it's still a viable option. Moving to our Nemesis deck, it's Gamora again. This time she's got the raging ump with you. And there's nothing good that comes from revealing this card. 2 scheme, 2 attack and 6 health is about expected. Not easy of course, but about par. But you're hoping that good mood Gamora is not on board on your side. And the advice I give to everyone, including myself, is make sure you deal with a Nemesis minion the turn it comes out. Because in this instance, no one wants to lose an upgrade. And yes, just so you don't have to rewind, techniques are also upgrades. The side scheme's self-preservation is double whammy for getting rid of her though, because not only is she debuffing Nebula's ability to do damage, it's also buffing Gamora's attack. This is the very definition of a wombo combo that you don't want to see in too many games with Nebula. Let's just hope you have some combat readies and lethal intents at the ready to instant speed your technique specials. 1 copy of Lethal Weapon and 2 copies of Old Rivals round out the Nemesis deck, with the former being manageable-ish and the latter being a surge card 7.8 times out of 10, which is much ado about nothing. And that leaves us with just about time for some thematic honourable mentions from the pack. Daughters of Thanos is another effort at trying to empower team-up cards, but I'd still like some rules amendments for solo play please. Still, a wild icon is a wild icon, and if you're multiplaying, you take that sweet card draw. Nowhere on the other hand is a tidy build around card, and thematic as all get out. A really solid card in the right deck, and a playgroup's best friend in multiplayer. Just keep spamming those Guardian allies and let the good times roll. That however has been Nebula in a hero pack. And you know what? There's some decent offensive power here and a reasonable amount of damage mitigation in her signature 15, but also in counter deck mitigation as well. Is it enough though to ignore the fact that she only has 9 health to begin with? One thing's for sure, it will definitely hold her back. But I do think compared to her peers at that breakpoint, she's got some game, and with the right piloting will give you some solid win rates. Alas, I have been the voice of Benji, and this video has ended.